Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the why, what and how of newspaper reading. Today we will discuss the articles displayed on the screen from the Delhi edition of The Hindu newspaper dated 2nd February 2019. A special video related to the budget of 2019 will be uploaded along with today's DNS. And this video is being prepared by Basavas. So do watch that video. Now let us start our discussion. This news article on page number 9 is related to the Indus dolphin, and it has been declared as the state aquatic animal of state of Punjab. So this is important for us from preliminary examination point of view under the topic biodiversity. Now if you look at the previous year questions which are related to important species, you will find that generally the questions are asked related to its status or the conservation status in the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Further, the location of such important animals become important for us from exam point of view. And if you look at these questions that were asked in the 2015 and 16, they ask about some special characteristics of these animals. For example, the question related to dugong cow was that it is a herbivorous marine animal or not. For the special characteristics of the kharai camel were asked in 2016. So that is why knowing such important features and conservation status and the location where they are found are important for us from preliminary examination point of view. Further, you should note that in the year 2015, there was a question related to the national aquatic animal of India. And we know that in this case, the answer is Gangetic dolphin. That is why knowing some facts related to Indus dolphin are important for us from preliminary examination point of view. So regarding the Indus dolphin, you should note that it is a subspecies of the freshwater river dolphin. And the other freshwater river dolphin is the Gangetic dolphin. And we know that the Gangetic dolphin is the national aquatic animal of India. And on this aspect, a question has been asked in the year 2015 in the preliminary examination. So here you should note that Indus River dolphin has been named as the national mammal of Pakistan. This is because it is found only in the Indus River which flows in Pakistan. And it is also found in river Beas in India, which is a tributary of Satluj River, which in turn is a tributary of the Indus River. So this Indus River dolphin is found only in the Indus River and the Beas River. Now the important fact for us from exam point of view in this news article is that it will be the state aquatic animal of Punjab. Further, you should note that these dolphins are blind. Now this important aspect can be asked in the exam because we know that such characteristics of kharai camel and the dugong cow have been asked in previous years. Further, you should note that it feeds on shrimps, fishes, birds, etc., which means that it is non-vegetarian. And finally, regarding the conservation status of Indus dolphin, you should note that it is listed as endangered in IUCN's Red List and is also listed in Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. So these are few important facts which you should keep in mind from your preliminary examination point of view. Further, you should go through the DNS of 21st January 2019 to understand in detail about the Irrawaddy dolphin and the Ganges River dolphin. And with this, let us move on to the next article. This news article on page number 9 talks about the restoration of Mandapam of the Meenakshi temple. So this will form an important part of preliminary examination under the topic Art and Culture in the History of India. So let us look at various features of the Meenakshi temple which are important for us from preliminary examination point of view. Now the first important point related to the Meenakshi temple is that it has been built in the Dravida style. And you should note that there are three important temple architectures in India. And these three types of temple architectures include the Nagara style, which is prevalent in the northern India, Dravida style, which is found in the southern part of India. And the third type is the Vesara type of temple architecture, which is a mix of both the Nagara and the Dravida styles. Now regarding the important characteristics and the differences between the Nagara, Dravida and the Vesara styles of temple architecture, you can go through any standard book of art and culture. And you should especially go through the NCERT of class 11th. Now let us look at important facts related to the Meenakshi temple. The first point is that it is located on the banks of Vaigai river in the city of Madurai in Tamil Nadu. Further, you should note that it is dedicated to Parvati, who is known as Meenakshi, and Shiva, who is named as Sundareshwarar. Now the first mention of this article has been found by a famous Hindu saint, whose name is Thirunana Sambandar, and who has mentioned about this temple in the 7th century itself. Further, this temple has also been mentioned in ancient Tamil literature. However, this temple was destroyed by the Muslim invader Malik Kafur in 1310. However, it was later rebuilt by Thirumalai Nayak during the period 1623 to 1655. Further, you should note that this temple has 12 gopurams or towers. And an important aspect is that it has around 33,000 sculptures. And the most important sculpture in this is the massive Nataraja sculpture. And this Nataraj sculpture is enclosed in a huge silver altar and is known as Velli Ambalam. So this is an important fact for us from preliminary examination point of view. Now another important feature of the Meenakshi temple is that it contains a 1,000-pillar hall. And this is known as Airam Kal Mandapam. And these 1,000 pillars are carved by Dravidian style of sculptures. As can be seen in this picture, this temple has a 1,000-pillar hall. Further, you should note that this temple also has a golden lotus pond, and this is known as Porthamarai Kulam. So all these points are important for us from preliminary examination point of view. And you should go through the NCERT Introduction to Art of Class 11th to understand the difference and the basics of Nagara Dravida and the Vesara style of temple architecture in ancient India. And with this, let us move on to the next article. This news article on page number 17 reads that the Colombo to Kandy highway in Sri Lanka will be funded by China. Now we know that China is increasing its presence in the Indian Ocean. And this presence of China is seen in various initiatives in Sri Lanka and parts of Pakistan. For example, China has been developing the Gwadar port in Pakistan. Similarly, it has been developing the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. So the increasing Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean has been termed as string of pearls theory. And a question has been asked based on the increasing presence of China in the Indian Ocean in the mains examination under the international relations. However, from preliminary examination point of view, the geographical locations are important for us. So let us look at the Chinese presence in the Sri Lankan island. And these locations will be important for us from the geographical locations of world. And regarding these geographical locations, you should generally note that only those locations are asked in preliminary examination which are in news in that year. So that is why these locations will be important for us. So here we will not discuss the India-China relations or the Chinese presence in Indian Ocean. However, we will only restrict our discussion to the geographical locations. Now regarding the location of Colombo to Kandy highway, you can see in the map of Sri Lanka. And you will find that Colombo lies on the western coast, while Kandy lies in the southern central part of Sri Lanka. And this can be seen in the map here. Further, another important initiative of China in the Sri Lanka is the Hambantota port. And this port is strategically important from Indian Ocean's point of view. And regarding the importance of Hambantota port, you should note that it will serve ships traveling along the east-west shipping route. And the importance of Hambantota port is that it overlooks the Malacca Strait and the Suez Canal. So the important point here to be noted is that all the ships that pass through the east-west shipping route, which connects the Malacca Straits and the Suez Canal, are overlooked by the Hambantota port. Further, another important investment of China in Sri Lanka is the Matalla airport. Now here you should note that India is trying to acquire this Matalla airport, which is very close to the Hambantota port. And this effort of India is to counter the influence of China in the Sri Lanka and the Indian Ocean. So the locations of these three Chinese investments in Sri Lanka are important for us from preliminary examination point of view. And these include the Hambantota port, its strategic importance, the location of Matalla airport, and this airport becomes all the more important because India is trying to acquire this airport with an aim to counter the Chinese influence in Sri Lanka. And finally, the China is trying to fund the Colombo to Kandy highway in Sri Lanka. So all these aspects should be kept in mind. And with this, let us move on to the next article. These two articles on page number 13 provide an analysis of the recently introduced scheme, that is the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi or the PM-KISAN. Now this scheme has been introduced in the budget of 2019. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 3 of the mains examination. Now you should note that the details of the PM-KISAN will be discussed in the budget video. So under this article, we will try to have a brief idea about why is the farm sector in distress. Further, we will try to understand what are the expected benefits from this scheme. And finally, we will look at the various pros and cons of this scheme. So now regarding the PM-KISAN Samman Nidhi Yojana, you should note that it provides an annual support of rupees 6,000 and it will be provided in 3 installments of rupees 2,000 each. Further, it will benefit those farming families which own up to 2 hectares of land, and it will be entirely funded by the central government or the union government. The budget has allocated rupees 20,000 crores for the current financial year, and rupees 75,000 crores have been allocated for the year 2019 to 2020. Now let us look at why was this scheme required at this point of time. Now you should note that this scheme was required because of the ongoing farm distress or the agrarian crisis. And this farm distress and agrarian crisis has been mainly due to the following reasons. The first in this line is the falling farm incomes. Now we should note that the income of the farmers is falling day by day. And this is because of lack of remunerative prices for the farm products. Secondly, due to low domestic food inflation, the prices of food products are falling rapidly. And that is why the farmers are not able to make more profit. We know that this has mainly been in the vegetable sector, where the prices of onions, etc. have reduced considerably. And that is why the profitability of farmers is decreasing. The third important reason for increasing farm distress is the fragmented land holdings. Now we note that in various parts of India, the density of population is very high and the land holding per family is very low. And due to small land holdings, the farmers are not able to make more profit. Another reason for farm distress is the increasing indebtedness of the farmers. And we note that various small and marginal farmers are under debt because they are taking credit from non-institutional sources like money lenders. And these money lenders at times charge rates which are extremely high. And that is why the farmers are not able to come out of this debt cycle. And this has primarily been the reason for farmer suicides in various parts of India. So all these reasons have led to the farm distress and agrarian crisis. So that is why this scheme was required, and this provides support to the incomes for the farming families, and especially to the small and marginal farmers who have a land holding under 2 hectares. Further, this scheme provides for 6,000 rupees monetary support, and this will be an income support for the farmers. And it will also help farmers from falling in debt trap continuously. Now, after going through the reasons for farm distress or the agrarian crisis, let us look at the challenges that are likely to be faced during the implementation of this scheme. Now, the first challenge that is likely to surface is the non-digitization of land records. Now, here you should note that the digitization of land records will provide a clear idea about the beneficiaries, and especially related to the titles of the beneficiary farming families. And you should note that these land records have not been adequately digitized, and that is why it will be difficult to identify the beneficiaries. Further, this scheme is likely to face various implementation issues. We note that in various cases of Aadhaar linked subsidy or the direct benefits transfer, many beneficiaries have been left out because of lack of biometric identification or the failure of biometric identification at times. So these are other likely implementation issues for this scheme. And the third and the foremost issue is the fiscal space in the government budget. This means that how is government going to finance this scheme? Although it has allocated 75,000 crores, it does not have the funds or the fiscal space for providing these benefits. So another important challenge in front of the government is that how it will raise such a big amount for financing these schemes. Now let us look at the various pros or the positives of this scheme that have been provided in these articles. The first is that this scheme will provide support over and above all the existing schemes for the farming sector. Now in this point you should note that the government has not reduced the benefits for the farmer under its existing schemes. For example, there has been no reduction in the benefits related to the schemes like the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Vikas Yojana or the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So that is why this support will be over and above all the existing schemes for the farming sector. So that is why it will be an additional income for the farming families. The second positive aspect is that it is a pan-India coverage scheme and it will benefit around 12 crore farming families. The third benefit is that it will provide the farming class with a sense of confidence. This is because they will get an assured amount of rupees 6,000 per annum in 3 installments of rupees 2,000. Finally, you should note that in this scheme, the beneficiary unit has been taken as a family. And we know that various small families are there in joint families. And that is why in large joint families, the accrued benefits will be larger. So this shows that the coverage is wide enough and it is likely to benefit the majority farming families in India, and especially the small and marginal farmers. Now let us look at some of the cons or the challenges and the negatives in this scheme. Now here you should note that this scheme provides for support of rupees 500 per family per month only. And this is not enough to alleviate the farm distress. This is because on an average it will only form 1/5 of the average household income in India. So in this line, it has been suggested that the benefits should be doubled for the farmers. And this doubling can be done by reducing various subsidies under food and fertilizer section. Further, another negative aspect of this scheme is that it does not cover tenant farmers and the landless agricultural laborers. And you should note that the tenant farmers and the landless agricultural laborers constitute majority of the below poverty line section of society. Further, there are other examples of schemes which provide for direct cash benefits to the farmers. And these include the Telangana's Raithu Bandhu scheme and the Odisha's Kalia scheme. And you should note that this scheme has also been inspired from these two schemes. However, the Telangana's Raithu Bandhu scheme provides a benefit of around 10,000 per annum. And similarly, the Odisha's Kalia scheme provides for rupees 25,000 benefit. So in this line, this scheme falls short of these two schemes. And finally, you should note that it would lead to recurring expenditure from the government's budget, which is already facing fiscal deficit. And as this scheme is a populist scheme, it will be hard to roll back such scheme. And this will also add to the fiscal deficit of the government. And we know that under the FRBM framework or the Fiscal Responsibility Management Framework, the government is bound to decrease its fiscal deficit. So this will be another challenge in front of the government while implementing this scheme. Now in the coming days, there will be various articles on the analysis related to this scheme. So all these points are important and can be used in answering questions related to the agricultural sectors. And a direct question can always be asked related to the challenges in the implementation of this scheme. So you should go through all these points. And with this, let us move on to the next article. The lead article on page number 10 has been written by a member of Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. So in this line, the author has provided various benefits of the government initiatives. And it has highlighted various benefits that are arising from initiatives like the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Nidhi Yojana, the GST, demonetization and JAM number Trinity. Further, the author has also highlighted the current status of the Indian economy. So these points can be useful from the General Studies paper 3 of the mains examination under the topic economic development. And these points can be used in highlighting the positives of various initiatives of the government of India. However, while writing a balanced answer, you should also be aware of the various challenges and a critical note about these initiatives. And these critical points are generally covered in various articles that appear in the newspaper. So let us look at the positive side of various initiatives of the government of India as highlighted by the author. So in this article, firstly the author has highlighted the benefits that are arising out of the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi Yojana. And this is an initiative which has been taken in the recent budget. And it provides for annual support of rupees 6,000 to farming families. So regarding this scheme, the author has highlighted that although this scheme would add to the government's fiscal deficit, but the author highlights that the benefits that are likely to arise out of this scheme are likely to outweigh the small rise in deficit. And the author is also confident that there will be only a small rise in the fiscal deficit. Further, in this article, it has been highlighted that due to the implementation of Goods and Services Tax or the GST, there is an expected increase in the buoyancy of government revenue. This is because it will lead to larger compliance and which will ultimately lead to widening of the tax base. And by widening tax base, we mean that the number of people who are filing the tax has increased. And that is why the government revenue is increasing. And further, this initiative of GST has provided for transparency in the indirect tax system. This is because in this system, the entire supply chain is taxed at every stage. Further, regarding demonetization, we know that it was implemented with an aim of flushing out black economy, elimination of fake Indian currency notes, conversion of non-formal economy to formal economy. and it was ultimately done in order to expand the tax base. So this article highlights that the GST and demonetization have helped the government in formalizing the tax structure. This means that more number of people are now entering the tax system of India. And as the tax base is widening and the revenues of government are increasing, it has been possible to allow for tax exemption up to 5 lakh of income under the present budget. So the author has highlighted that these initiatives are good economic initiatives and they have led to the widening of tax bases and reduction of tax rates. Highlighting the increase in tax receipts of the government, the article highlights that the tax receipts have now grown from 10% to 12% of GDP. Further, the benefits of Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile or the JAM number Trinity in the social welfare has been highlighted. And we should note that the Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity has been discussed in detail in the Economic Survey of 2015 and 16. So in this line, this article highlights that this JAM number Trinity aims to identify the beneficiaries and transfer funds and improve the last mile connectivity for accessing the funds for social benefits. And it is due to this JAM number Trinity that small expenditure has led to larger impact on social welfare. And this JAM number Trinity is being used in providing subsidies for fertilizers or various social initiatives like pensions for the old age people. So overall, the article highlights various positive initiatives of Government of India and what are the likely benefits that are arising out of these initiatives. Now let us look at the current state of Indian economy as has been highlighted by this article. Now the first point that has been highlighted is that the revenue deficit has been maintained and the expenditure on capital account has increased. Now we know that the budget has two parts. First is the revenue budget and the second is the capital budget. Now in the revenue budget, the revenue deficit increases when the revenue expenditure increases and the revenue receipts decrease. Now here we note that the revenue expenditure is that expenditure which does not lead to the creation of any assets, and that is not good for the economy. Here the revenue expenditure includes various expenditure by the governments like the subsidies or the interest payments. And we note that these expenditures do not lead to the creation of any assets. That is why revenue deficit is considered as bad for any economy. However, the capital budget or the expenditure on capital account increases the assets in the Indian economy. For example, expenditure on the creation of assets like infrastructure, which include roads, railways, etc., is beneficial for economy. This is because such expenditures have a domino effect on other sectors of economy. That is why the article highlights that the revenue deficit has now been maintained or is not increasing further. However, the expenditure on capital account is increasing, which will further lead to an improvement in the Indian economy. In this line, it has also been highlighted that related to infrastructure, the highways are now being built at 27 kilometers per day. And that has made India the fastest highway builder in the world. Further, the article highlights that the government borrowing is now increasing from the market. And as the government borrowing is increasing from the market, the yields on various government bonds is increasing. And this is a sign that the government is increasingly investing in the infrastructure development in the country. Further, it has been highlighted that the oil prices are now falling in the international market. And due to this, the author is hopeful that the foreign investors will now return to India. Earlier, we know that the foreign investment is declining because of global slowdown. Another important point that has been highlighted in this article is that there is a decline in the international demand, and this is largely due to global economic slowdown. So in this line, it has been highlighted that there is a need for boosting the domestic demand, and this domestic demand will keep the economy vibrant. So the steps by the government like the tax rate cut for income of 5 lakh rupees and cash transfer to farmers and the schemes to improve the demand in housing sector are all rightly timed and appropriate. This is because these initiatives will create domestic demand and will improve the economic conditions of the country. Further, the article highlights that the budgetary contribution to the capital expenditure is just at 1.6% of the GDP. This means that the government is increasing its capital expenditure other than the budgetary contribution. So this will not lead to a further increase in the fiscal deficit, and which is a positive sign for the Indian economy. And finally, the article highlights that the market borrowing by the public enterprises or the public sector enterprises is being used for investment. Now, as these public sector enterprises are borrowing from the market, this will lead to an increase in the demand in the local economy. Now, as the demand in the local economy will increase, it will lead to crowding in of the private investment, which means that the private investment will further increase because of investment in various infrastructure related projects by the public sector enterprises or the government. So, all these initiatives are collectively leading to a vibrant economy, and the recent initiatives in the budget are further going to boost the Indian economy. Now, after going through these points, you should try and answer this question from your mains examination point of view. And with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, in today's practice questions, you should try and answer the questions which have been asked in the previous years which are related to the budget. For example, there were two questions in the year 2016. Here you should note that two questions were asked in the year 2016 related to the budget. Further, in the year 2015, there was one question which was similar to the question which was asked in 2016. And also there was a question in the year 2013. So you should try and answer these questions one by one. Now, if you notice here, two similar questions have been asked in the year 2016 and 2015. Now, in this question that was asked in the year 2016, you should understand that deficit budget simply means that the government is spending more than what it is earning. So this means that the government's revenue is low, while the expenditure of government is high. So now the question reads, which actions of the following can be taken by the government to reduce this deficit? Now the first option that is given is that reducing revenue expenditure. Now, as we know that the government deficit is because the government revenue is low and the expenditure is high. So in this case, if the government reduces the revenue expenditure, it can considerably decrease its deficit budget. The second statement reads, introducing new welfare schemes. Now this is incorrect because by introducing new welfare schemes, the government will have to spend more. And we know that the deficit is because of more spending by the government as compared to its revenue. The third statement reads, rationalizing subsidies. Now we know that the major part of expenditure of the government is related to the subsidies. And these subsidies include various types, for example, agricultural subsidies, educational subsidies, subsidies for backward sections, etc. So that is why if the government reduces or rationalizes these subsidies, it can reduce the deficit. The fourth is related to reduction in the import duty. Now this is related to the balance of payment problem and has no relation with the budget. That is why this is a wrong statement. Hence the correct answer that comes out is C, that is 1 and 3 only. Now if you look at the question that was asked in 2015, it reads, there has been a persistent deficit budget year after year. Which of the following actions can be taken by the government to reduce the deficit? Now in this question also, the statements are same except the fourth one. So now in this case, the first one is correct that by reducing the revenue expenditure, the government can decrease its deficit. The second is incorrect, that is introducing new welfare schemes will increase the deficit for the government. The third statement is again correct because we know that by rationalizing subsidies, the government can reduce its expenditure. And that is how it can reduce the deficit. Now the fourth statement, that is expanding the industries, is incorrect because for expanding industries, the government will provide various subsidies and this will further lead to increased expenditure and it will further lead to an increase in the deficit in the budget. That is why this fourth statement is incorrect. Here also the correct answer is A, that is 1 and 3 only. Now here you should notice that the question that was asked in 2015 has also been repeated in the year 2016 with just a small difference, that is a difference in the statement in the question. So that is why you should always go through the previous year questions in order to get an idea about what can be asked in the exam. And as you have noticed, at times questions are repeated also. Now let us look at another question that was asked in the year 2016 which was related to the budget. Now this question reads, which of the following is or are included in the capital budget of Government of India? Now you should note that the government budget is divided into two parts. The first is the revenue budget and the second is the capital budget. Now the revenue budget includes the revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. In the revenue receipts, you know that the tax and non-tax revenues are included. While in the revenue expenditure, you should note that all the expenditure that is done on the public administration is included in the revenue expenditure part of the revenue budget. And the capital budget includes the capital receipts and the capital expenditure. Now, the capital receipts includes all those activities which increase the government liabilities. For example, the borrowings from the market are considered as capital receipts. Further, you should note that the disinvestments of the public sector enterprises is also included in the capital receipts. However, the capital expenditure includes all the activities of government which creates assets. So these can include the expenditure on construction of roads, buildings, machineries, etc. Now let us look at the statements that are provided in this question. The first statement reads that expenditure on acquisition of assets like roads, buildings and machinery, etc. Now you should note that, as we know that it is a part of the capital expenditure because it is related to the creation of assets. So that is why it is included in the capital budget. The second is related to the loans received from foreign governments. We know that these are the borrowings of the government for creation of various assets. The third statement reads the loans and advances granted to the states and union territories. Now you should note that these loans and advances will also be used for creating capital assets, and that is why it is also included in the capital budget. Hence the correct answer that comes out is D, that is all the three statements 1, 2 and 3 are correct. Now let us look at the question that was asked in the year 2013. This question reads, in India, deficit financing is used for raising resources for. Now we know that the budget deficit is when the revenue of the government is less as compared to the expenditure of the government. And we know that this expenditure increases over and above the revenue of the government because government spends on various welfare measures. For example, government provides subsidies. They also invest in welfare schemes which are related to vulnerable sections. And as we know that in the recent budget, the government has provided economic benefit to the farmers under the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Yojana. So here you should note that the deficit budget is because the government is spending more on the economic development. And this deficit financing is done in order to cover up for the deficit in the budget. That is why the correct answer that comes out is A, that is the deficit financing is used for raising resources for economic development. So after these questions, let us look at some of the articles from today's newspaper. With this, we have come to the end of today's discussion. Now let us move on to the question for the day.